This footage, posted on the Russian Telegram channel MASH, claims to show a drone attack on Moscow. Russian officials said the city's air defence system disabled or shot down all of the drones, but that several buildings were damaged by falling debris, injuring some residents.
The building security team came to our apartments and asked us to go downstairs. That's about it. We didn't hear any drones or explosions. At first I even thought, should we go down or not?
Russia's defence ministry has blamed Ukraine, issuing a statement saying the Kyiv regime launched a terrorist attack with unmanned aerial vehicles on objects in the city of Moscow. 8 aircraft-type UAVs were involved in the attack. All enemy drones were destroyed. An aide to Ukraine's president denied Kyiv was directly involved, but he went on to say that he predicts such attacks on Moscow will increase. Earlier this month, the Kremlin was hit in a drone strike. US officials have since said it was likely orchestrated by Ukraine's military. Oil pipelines and Russian border regions have also been targeted. Life in Moscow has remained relatively normal since the start of the war, but this latest strike comes as Russia's war in Ukraine increasingly creeps back across the border.
Reacting to the news that Moscow had been hit by drones, the Russian president said it was an example of terrorism by Ukraine.
As you know, the Kiev regime has chosen a different path, the path of attempts to intimidate Russia, Russian citizens, and attacks on residential buildings. This is, of course, a clear sign of terrorist activities. First, I want to say that the Moscow air defense system worked in the regular way, although there are things for us to work on.
Moscow is blaming these attacks on Ukraine, but how likely is it that Ukraine is really behind them? We put that question to Marina Moran, Senior Fellow in War Studies at King's College in London.
There is a likelihood that it could be Ukraine indeed, if we take into account that Moscow has been striking Ukrainian capital, especially prior to the celebrations in Kiev this Sunday. And the statements by the mayor of Kiev, as well as the head of the Ukrainian military intelligence, indicate that there will be a response from Kiev, and therefore that could potentially give Kiev a motive to exploit the gaps in air defenses in Moscow in order to launch that attack. Another version of this could be the FSB, so the Russian intelligence services could have staged the attack to give Putin a carte blanche to launch his attacks against the Ukrainian capital and other targets within Ukraine. So there is no clarity. There are different versions, and these are probably the most prominent ones. However, you need coordination in order to launch a drone swarm like we have seen today in Moscow. Therefore, it is to exclude that it is some sort of a single actor who is just opposed to the might have been behind the attack.
Roman Dobrokhatov is with us now for more. He's a Russian journalist who fled persecution in Russia. He's currently the editor-in-chief of The Insider, a Russia-focused independent media outlet. Mr. Dobrokhatov, welcome to the day. What have you been hearing about these attacks on Moscow?
So we are pretty sure that this is not a false flag attack, that this is a real Ukrainian attack. And though most of the drones, or actually all of the drones, didn't reach their targets, apparently, I think still that this is a pretty effective attack in sense that it caused a lot of like emotional, big emotional reactions from all the people in Moscow, including like, I don't know, show business stars who are now publishing in their Instagrams videos showing that they are absolutely shocked by what's going on. And it's not shocking for most of the people who like watch independent news, but for those people who believe propaganda and who thought that they're absolutely safe in Moscow and that the war is very far away, for them this is a big news actually, because war is really coming to their doors, to their houses. So
Yeah.
this is, I think, maybe the main actually aim of this attack.
Yeah, and the Kremlin has kind of been building on the apathetic status quo of people thinking that this is a conflict that doesn't really, relate to their lives at all. How tenable is this position vis-a-vis the war when the war is moving closer and closer to home?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this can be a game changer when people understand that this social contract, when Putin gives them security and also some level of prosperity, but they have no influence in politics, this social contract doesn't work anymore, because why would they really support Putin? Why they would legitimize war? So there is no economic stability, there is no real prosperity, and also now there is no security, because the war is actually on Russian ground, not only with these drones in Moscow, but also we see that in Belgrade there are some Ukrainian troops already on Russian ground. We see in other near other Russian borders, we see that the situation is less safe for Russians. So yeah, it is changing. And also this Russian narrative that like in several days we'll be in Kiev, then okay, maybe in several months we will invade this country, and now Russia is defending itself on Russian soil, which is like how it can be with such a powerful army that is pretended to be in Russian TV channel. So I think it is also a very strong hit on Russian propaganda with these drone strikes.
Yeah, what do you make of the messaging surrounding these attacks?
So yeah, as we discussed, the first message is that nowhere in Russia you are safe now, and there will be response on all this shelling of Kiev and other Ukrainian cities. So it empowers Ukrainians, and it also puts all the Putin supporters in this frustration. And the second message, I think, is that the propaganda lies to you. The propaganda that says that everything is in control, that we have a very strong army, that like our Ministry of Defense is actually very successful. Even people like Prigozhin, who are actually the part of elite, one of the main Putin supporters, he used these drone attacks to criticize Ministry of Defense, saying that, like, you see, these people don't control anything.
Yeah.
Which helps to split elite in several parts. I think it's also part of Ukrainian strategy.
Mm-hmm. And maybe I'm reading a little too much into this, but the location of these strikes is also quite interesting, isn't it? Because it hit a wealthy Moscow suburb fairly close to one of Putin's residences.
Yeah, I don't know if it is a coincidence, but yes, one of the drones was near this place where all the elite leaders are living. And it was told for a long time ago that if this region will be attacked, maybe there will be some political changes, because these people, they care about themselves. They don't care about anyone else in Russia. But this will be something important. So yes, maybe that was one of the real targets. And I think very little number of people would really sympathize those oligarchs living there under these strikes. I think like millions of Russians would actually support these strikes if these houses would be under attack.
Mm-hmm. Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin spokesperson, said today in response to these attacks that there is no imminent threat to residents of Moscow. Do you think the people living there believe him after today?
Well, I think no one believes Peskov for many years anyway, but yeah, people believe their eyes, and you can see how they discuss it in social networks. You can see the videos that they publish. They are absolutely shocked. This is the main news and will be for many days the main thing that people discuss. So yeah, why would they believe Peskov if they can just look into the window and see the drones flying? So it speaks by itself.
What's going on in the Kremlin right now? How worried is Putin about this?
Well, we don't know anything about what is in Putin's head, but as I already mentioned, there are signs that the elite is split because there is a big conflict between the Minister of Defense and Prigozhin on the one hand, and Ramzan Kadyrov on the other hand. We see that there are lots of people in the government, in the Minister of Defense himself, in FSB, who are not happy with how all these things now going, with all this. I mean, with all this stepping back in Ukraine, that we have to live new and new cities in Ukraine. So no one believes in any good scenario. Actually, Prigozhin said by himself that the best scenario existing is that they just keep the territory they already are controlling now, and he himself does not believe in this best scenario. That's what he said. This is important because he is actually the owner of a troll farm, so the very big important part of propaganda in the internet. If he on his own says this, you can believe what people in elite are thinking now.
Roman Dobrokhotov, editor-in-chief of The Insider, thank you so much for your view of this day and for your time.
Thank you.
Ukrainian authorities say Russia has carried out another wave of drone attacks on the capital, Kyiv, killing at least one person. Ukraine's defense forces say 29 out of 31 Iranian-made drones were shot down in the early hours of Tuesday morning. Kyiv has come under increasing pressure, with 17 attacks in the past month alone.
Surveying the damage to their homes. This apartment block was one of the buildings hit in the latest attack on Ukraine's capital. While everyone here escaped, some with injuries, at least one person was killed as Kyiv was targeted once more. When the drone is flying, I feel fear. Now everyone here survived, so you feel happy that you're alive, but you think about what will happen next. This is the third Russian attack on Kyiv in 24 hours. Ukraine's Air Force says it downed almost all of the attacking drones.
Almost every day we receive the attack from missiles, kamikaze drones. Putin needs Ukraine without Ukrainians. It's terrorism. It's everyone, yes, of course, worry about that. And Russians want to bring depression to our people. Instead, depression, people very angry.
These Kyiv residents have already lost so much, but they have to stay on alert, fearing it's only a matter of time before the next strike comes.
Earlier, I talked with DW's Roman Goncharenko and asked him why Russia is ramping up pressure on the Ukrainian capital now.
Well, Russia has been saving missiles and drones for weeks, and we are seeing that they are using them now. The possible reasons could be Russia is trying to disrupt the Ukrainian counter-offensive, much expected counter-offensive, which is probably days away, maybe weeks. Of course, there is a growing pressure on the Russian government to somehow respond to what we've seen before. And we've seen a kind of a raid of pro-Russian military, paramilitary, we don't know exactly who they are, who are fighting, who went to the neighboring region of Belgorod and showed that the border from the Russian side is not protected. So the Russian army was humiliated by that group. We also saw Ukraine hitting or sending 2 drones flying over the Kremlin, which was shot down, but they showed the vulnerability of the Russian capital. And so Russia is trying to also retaliate, kind of, as Russia sees it, of course, for those things. And that's why Russia is now putting more pressure on the Ukrainian capital.
Yeah, stay with us, Roman, because now that you talk about vulnerability, Russian officials have blamed Ukraine for drone attacks, which damaged several buildings in Moscow. today. Officials said 2 people were injured in the early morning air raid, but a Ukrainian presidential aide has denied Kyiv's direct involvement while at the same time predicting more such attacks. Russia's President Vladimir Putin has accused Ukraine of trying to terrorize Russian civilians.
As you know, the Kyiv regime has chosen a different path. The path of attempts to intimidate Russia, Russian citizens, and attacks on residential buildings. This is, of course, a clear sign of terrorist activity. First, I want to say that the Moscow air defense system worked in the regular way, although there are things for us to work on.
Roman, what's your take on Putin's comments?
Well, Russia has launched an unprecedented series of drone attacks and missile attacks on the Ukrainian capital, so it sounds strange when Russian President Vladimir Putin says that Ukraine cannot retaliate for that, calling that terrorism. Well, we don't know who is behind it, but there is a discussion now in Russia what to do. So the Russian government is under growing pressure because there was also criticism of the Russian Defense Ministry before. Now people say that the Russian defense is not that good, that those drones shouldn't have come that far. They shouldn't have been prevented from flying over Moscow. Some of them hit residential buildings. So this all shows that Russian army is not all that mighty, as the Russian media suggests.
Yeah, and the head of the Wagner mercenary group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, has chimed in criticizing precisely, again, the Russian military leadership. The question on everybody's mind right now is, though, as the Ukrainians deny direct involvement, who was behind these attacks?
Well, we don't know, of course, but when you follow the social media, when you follow what politicians say, it is possible that two possibilities here: the Ukrainian forces or some pro-Russian forces inside Russia, maybe a combination of both, which is a third possibility. But anyway, no matter who is behind it, it is, as I've just said, putting increasing pressure on the Russian government because it just showed that it cannot protect its capital, and this is a serial blow for Vladimir Putin, the president.
Mm-hmm. Some analysts also point at the possibility of this being a false flag operation instigated by Russia itself. Now, with this war moving apparently closer to home for Russians, though, Roman, does it look like we might be entering a new stage in the war?
Well, this is definitely a new stage. We've seen, if we compare this to a boxer fight, we've seen that the punches are harder on both sides. With Russians hitting more and more Ukrainian towns and cities with missiles, also hitting military facilities, destroying some aircraft. We don't know the details, but Ukraine first, just a day ago, admitted that some aircraft was destroyed in the western Ukraine. And Ukrainians sending more and more drones for the first time, probably, we do not know for sure, using Western long-range missiles to hit the targets on the occupied territories. This is all a sign that the Ukrainian counteroffensive is coming closer and closer.
DW's Roman Goncharenko, thank you so much.
Let's get more from our correspondent, Max Zander, who is in Kyiv. Hi there, Max. So no respite in Moscow's attacks on Kyiv?
No, not at all, Anya. People here in the capital, Kyiv, have literally had not a chance to rest and recover after having experienced 3 large-scale attacks within the matter of just 24 hours. One of them being the largest attack since the beginning of the full-scale invasions, which happened on the night from Sunday to Monday, where Russia attacked with a combination of cruise missiles and drones. After that, yesterday during the day, somewhat 24 hours ago, we saw another attack during the daytime with ballistic missiles that were all intercepted according to officials. And then last night, again, residents here in Kyiv were woken up at 2:30 during the night when they heard explosions and air defense was going to work. The Ukrainian Air Force says that 31 Shahed drones were sent to Kyiv last night. They say they were able to take out 29 of them. As a consequence of that, burning debris caused some damage in various parts of the city. And in one case, burning debris hit through the roof of a high-rise building, causing a fire, leading to the death of a 33-year-old woman.
Do we know why these attacks on Kyiv in particular are intensifying?
I mean, hard to say why the Russians are doing this. Could have to do something with the anticipated Ukrainian counteroffensive that everybody here in Ukraine, but also certainly in Russia, people are waiting for it to kick off. The Russians say they are targeting military targets. We don't know what exactly they're targeting and what they exactly are hitting for security reasons. But this will also have to do with testing the air defenses, finding out where the Ukrainians in the capital, here in the power center, have their Patriot systems or other anti-aircraft systems, where they are deployed and how they are actually operating. Also probably about exhausting the resources here and trying to potentially find a way of getting around them in the future. This is certainly not the priority, but this definitely also takes a toll on the population. So this may also have to do with breaking down the morale of the people here. After all, we've had 16 or even more attacks since the beginning of May alone. So you can imagine that this does something to people here living in the city.
Absolutely, no doubt about the psychological impact of those attacks. Max, thanks so much. That's DW's Max Zander reporting from Kyiv.